Hey, welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Hidden Histories, the Untold Files. You know, living in New York, you get used to seeing people who are masters of their own anonymity. The person sitting next to you on the subway, lost in a book with a plain cover. The neighbor you've nodded to for years, but whose name you've never learned. We all have our secrets, small walls we build around our lives. But what happens when someone builds a fortress? When every single detail of their existence is meticulously erased, and the only thing they leave behind is a body. That's the heart of our story today. Episode 12, The Isdal Woman, Death of a Nameless Spy. It begins in the cold, late November 1970. In Bergen, Norway, a city of steep mountains and deep fjords. Two families are out for a hike in the Isdal Valley, a place whose name literally translates to Ice Valley. It's a stark, beautiful, and lonely place. The children are playing, chasing each other between the rocks, when they stumble upon something horrifying. A woman's body, badly burned, lying on the ground. She's partially covered with burnt branches. The police arrive, and the scene gets stranger. Near her body, they find a plastic bottle of petrol, a burned passport, sleeping pills, a fur hat, and an empty bottle of wine. It looks, at first glance, like a tragic suicide. But nothing about this woman is what it seems. The autopsy revealed she was alive when the fire started. She had consumed a significant number of sleeping pills and had carbon monoxide in her lungs. But the cause of death was ultimately the burns and the cold. And there were bruises. This wasn't just a woman who decided to end her life in a remote valley. Something, or someone, had happened to her. And that's when investigators started pulling the thread, and her entire fabricated identity began to unravel. They had no idea who she was. No identification. The labels had been carefully cut out of all her clothing. The serial numbers had been filed off her luggage, which was found later at the Bergen train station. Even the maker's marks on her false teeth had been removed. This was a level of tradecraft that screamed one thing: espionage. This was a professional. So the police did the only thing they could. They reconstructed her last movements, and it was like tracing a ghost. They discovered she had been traveling across Europe under at least 8 different aliases. She'd been in Belgium, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and all over Norway. She stayed in modest hotels, always paying in cash. She would change her appearance, wigs, different hairstyles, glasses. She spoke multiple languages, though witnesses said her French and German had a slight, unplaceable accent. She was cautious, often requesting rooms with 2 exits. In one hotel, she burned papers in the sink. In another, she was seen having tense conversations with a well-dressed man. She was a chameleon, moving through the shadows of the Cold War. And in November 1970, her journey ended on that cold mountainside. The prevailing theory, one that most investigators and historians lean toward, is that she was a spy. But for whom? The Cold War context is everything. Norway was a NATO country sharing a border with the Soviet Union. It was a key listening post. Was she a courier for the Soviets? A NATO asset who was compromised? A lone operative working for some other intelligence service? The KGB, the Stasi, MI6, the CIA, they all had people in play. Her methods suggest she was likely what's called an illegal, an agent operating without diplomatic cover, deep undercover. And if that's true, her death was almost certainly a liquidation. A professional, silent kill made to look like a suicide or an accident. The burning was likely to make identification impossible, and it very nearly worked. But here's where this case gets under my skin, and why it's more than just a spy thriller. It's about the profound loneliness of that life. As an engineer and an entrepreneur, I've traveled a fair bit. I know the strange solitude of hotel rooms in foreign cities, the weight of carrying your own ambitions. But I can't imagine the crushing isolation of carrying a false name, of having no one in the world who knows your real story. To have your entire life reduced to a series of hotel registrations and discarded wigs. Who was she, really? Did she have a family somewhere who still wonders what happened to their sister, their daughter? Was she a true believer in a cause? Or was she a pawn in a game so vast she lost herself in it? The forensic artists created a death mask, a reconstruction of her face. She looks peaceful, almost ordinary. A woman you might pass on the street and never notice. And that, of course, was the point. For decades, she was known only as the Isdal Woman, buried in a numbered grave in Bergen. But the quest to give her a name never stopped. In 2016, Norwegian police exhumed her body, hoping modern DNA and isotope analysis could trace her origins. The isotopes in her teeth and bones suggested she was likely born in Germany or possibly Central Europe in the late 1920s or early 1930s. She'd spent significant time in France, possibly near the German border, and in South America in her later years. It's a startlingly detailed geographical biography, yet it still doesn't give us a name. It just adds more layers to the mystery. She was a child during World War II, came of age in the shattered aftermath, and then vanished into the clandestine world. Her entire known life is just that final, frantic month of travel before she ended up in Isdal. So what's the takeaway from this nameless woman in the Ice Valley? For me, it's a reminder that history isn't just about the grand narratives we all know, the treaties, the battles, the famous leaders. It's also written in the shadows by people who were deliberately erased. The Cold War wasn't just missiles and summits. It was fought by thousands of invisible people like her, living and dying in the gray spaces between nations. Her story is a silence that echoes, a single, stark question mark written in the landscape of Norway. And in a way, by investigating her death, by refusing to let her be just a numbered grave, we are pushing back against that erasure. We are saying that every life, even the most hidden one, leaves a trace. Thank you for listening to this episode of Hidden Histories, The Untold Files. If these journeys into the forgotten corners of the past matter to you, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Share it with someone who loves a good mystery. And for more from us, visit our production home at Light Not Studios. https://www.lightnotstudios.com. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi. Until next time, look a little closer at the shadows. There's always a story waiting there.